want to just start by really warmly thanking Ben Schwartz. Warmly. I was saying everybody in peds was like, we have to get him into peds, which from pediatricians is like a big compliment, I think. And then I just want to warmly and deeply show my gratitude for Dodie and Steve's beautiful family. Just thank you so much. Just the chance to continue his legacy of humanism and really just to hear from you today, Dodie, was really beautiful. And thank you for sharing that he was always late. It makes me feel a little bit better. And then we'll really thank you to the Gold Foundation for their continued, really deep belief in what we do here. We were talking about the white coat ceremony, which I didn't have one because it was sort of before those all started, because they started here. And this year, my medical school asked me to write a note to a student who is getting their white coat, and I thought that was such a beautiful thing to do. So I hope we can start that tradition here, as you had mentioned. One of the other things is that there's a Steve Miller Day and Fellowship Committee, and I'm going to it's on the back of the program. It's Ann Armstrong-Coben, Doreen, and who's our chief resident, and Blake, our other chief resident, Peter Diane, Mike Devlin, Peg Dubner, who I just want to pause to say none of this would happen without her. Thank you. Peg is remarkable, and her commitment to really making sure that Steve shines through on this day is remarkable. Mary Ellen Lane, Marianne Lofermento, Jody, Andrew Mutnick, Mary Sonnet. Thank you all, and if anybody is interested in joining us, it is really a wonderful group, and we get to review these really amazing student applications, which we'll show you in a bit. The first person I want to invite up, every year we like to just have some reflections because so much of Steve's legacy remains on this campus and remains in the teaching, not only in pediatrics, but really through the medical school. And the first person who's going to join us is Marianne Lofermento, who is back with us, was a resident here, is back with us in the Well Baby Nursery and Newborn Nursery, and is going to share some words and also a video around teaching that Steve did. So, Marianne. Oh, there you are, sorry.
It's always a pleasure. This is a day that I attended even when I wasn't on campus, and just so happy to be a part of this, to honor Steve, who was a dear friend and a colleague. So legacies can be, sometimes you don't know what you're doing, and my art, which I talked to our wonderful speaker today about, was to make a decision, since I love to do filmmaking, and I loved medicine. And I made a choice of one or the other, but came back to the filmmaking. And after taking a sabbatical back in the day of, just the beginning of video production, I took a sabbatical and went to NYU Film School for 6 months, left my private practice. When I came back, it was the turn of the century, and Steve and I, who were very active at the APA, at the now Academic Pediatric Association, and very involved in medical student education, we came up with the idea, well, students are really incredibly nervous when they see their first pediatric patient, especially if they're a baby, and they didn't know what to do. So we came up with this idea, and we conceived of a video, which we then produced, called Introduction to the Pediatric Physical Examination for Medical Students. And we interviewed medical students on their first day of their first rotation, which was pediatrics, and we elicited all of their anxieties and everything. For those who want to see the full video, it's available on Vimeo, and we have the links for that, and it's just wonderful to see. It was 1999, literally. VHS times. But that video was distributed to every medical school in the country and in Canada, was used for years, was converted to a DVD and then to digital, and it's still out there, and we honor Steve. So what you're going to see is the clips from that of Steve showing how to do a preschool examination and then sharing some of his thoughts. So this is with love. We'd like to share this.
You.
main points that I would want to make for a medical student who's about to do their first physical examinations with children, your main goal should be just to get the child to feel comfortable with you, and then do the physical exam. You can pretty much expect 2 or 3 or 4-year-old, there's a good chance that that child at some point is either going to try to run to the other side of the room, hide behind their mom, or even start crying about something that you do. So when those moments happen, rather than forcing the issue, just back off. You may even have to leave the room, take a deep breath, come back in, and start all over again. It's really important just to get your body down to their level, watch what they're looking at, and get them to relax and make the whole history and physical exam more part of a game. Make some guesses by age. I think, 3, 4, or 5-year-old, they like to think magically about superheroes or dolls at that age. There's a lot of fantasizing that goes on. Flexibility is important, and the rule is that you have to break the pattern. You have to just kind of do whatever it takes to get things done.
Mark, get set, go. Well, try the ears, the ears, the ears, the ears. Mouth? Ears or mouth? Mouth again? Yeah. Beautiful.
Smiling is important. Laughing with a child, being a little bit playful. This is a place where you're allowed to be less formal. Take the opportunity to enjoy it. For me, it's a terrific pleasure. I have a great time. That's why I ended up choosing pediatrics. I think I enjoy the playfulness of the kids and the families, and hopefully you'll have a good time too.
Thank you so much for bringing that back to us, and you could just see the naturalness, the gentleness, and it's so beautiful. And I remember when I discovered this when I was doing the MCY and was able to put it back on to courseworks, and how just applicable it still is. So Marianne, thank you so much again. It's really beautiful. I'm so delighted that Maya Castillo is here with us today. Maya was a resident here and also a med student. I met her when she was a resident, and I was just transferring from Audubon Clinic as a faculty member to 181st Street, and I feel like she really helped me transition. Thursdays were a rough day, and she was always so kind to me. But she's now, I'm so excited to say AVP and Medical Director for Health First, and so she is making changes and advocating for pediatrics and for pediatricians and for children. And we asked her to come and say some words about her memories about Steve and his impact.
Hi, guys. I am a pediatrician by training, though I'm not seeing patients anymore, as you can see. And I was a med student here from 2000 to 2005. Note the extra year. I actually took a year off to do a Fulbright because it was a cool opportunity, and also because med school was really hard. Who's med students here? Who are the med students? Okay. I don't know about you guys, but I thought med school was like really hard. Is it still hard? Yeah, it's still hard. Okay, yeah, it's pretty hard. And like, not just like hard, like you have to learn a lot, but it is physically and mentally grueling in ways I think you don't expect it's going to be. And I think that the way that medical education is set up has a lot of good, but I don't know if you guys still experience this, but there's a lot of pimping. Do you guys still use that word, pimping? Yeah, and there's a lot of like things that are going to wear you down, and sometimes you feel like at least I felt self-doubt, like, am I going to be a good doctor? Like, should I even keep doing this? Like, what am I doing here? Everyone feels much smarter or more self-confident, and I think we all actually in the end feel the same way, but I say all this to lead back to when I was a med student. And if you felt this way when you were a med student, when I was a med student, the person you went to was Steve Miller. And you went to talk to Steve Miller not just because he was a nice guy or a good teacher or because he had really fun ties, and he had a lot of really fun ties. I actually remember that tie. But because he listened and he made time for you. and he listened. So when you went to Steve Miller, and you went to his office, he finished whatever he was doing. Of the 10 million things he did, because he always had 10 million things going on, and he came out from behind he closed his computer, he came out from behind his desk, and he sat in a chair that he had positioned specifically across from another chair so that he would have no barriers between himself and you. And he sat, and he put his hands together, and he put his arms on his lap, and he leaned forward, and he listened. And he listened until you were done talking, or until Jackie came and knocked on the door and told him he was late for the next thing, right? Which usually was the case. And then he said, if you weren't done, he said, walk me to my next thing, right? Walk me to my next thing so you can keep telling me what you're telling me. And when Steve Miller was done listening to you, you felt better. And you felt better not necessarily because he solved your problem or anything like that, because you came to him to talk about family things, school things. It could be anything you came to talk to him about. But you felt better because you felt heard and you felt understood. And I think those are things that are pretty rare when you're a med student to feel from somebody who's in a position of power and authority above you, right? And this was very special to Steve Miller. And he did this not only for students, he did this for patients. I mean, I actually didn't know this video was going to play, but it was really, right? It was really good. I remember shadowing him in the ER. And if you shadowed him in the ER, when you came into the ER with him, there was a slight noticeable groan, I think, from some of the nurses, because he did slow things down a little bit. Right? But he slowed things down because he took his time with the patients and he listened to them. And I watched him. I remember very clearly watching him explain why an IV is placed and how an IV is placed to a girl who was probably 6 or 7, who was very scared to have an IV placed. He spent about 15 minutes explaining the circulatory system and IV placement to her. And afterwards, she got the IV placed without a tear. She just sat and let them put the IV in. And so if there is one thing that I can impart to you from Steve Miller that you can take and you can use, it is this. It is the art of listening. It is one of the most therapeutic things that you can do for a patient, a colleague, anybody around you. And some days it's going to be the hardest thing you have to do, right? Because you've got 40 patients and you are all this stuff backlogged and you're trying to get stuff done. And listening might be the thing that that patient needs most, and it's going to be the hardest thing that you have to do. So I just want to leave you with some very specific words that I remember from Steve Miller. I may not have them exact, but they are words that have carried me through the last 20-some years and that I continue to use on a daily basis with patients or with my kids or with anybody. And that was, I remember him saying specifically in a small group, when you're walking up to the door of a room to enter and talk to a patient, and you have all of this stuff in your head, all of this, I gotta do this, and I'm angry about this, and that person just yelled at me. When you put your hand on the door, don't open it. Stop yourself. Take a breath. Breathe in, breathe out, take a breath, and leave all of that outside of the room. Leave all of it outside of the room. And when you walk through that door, you are there specifically for that patient in that moment to listen to them and do what they need. And it is hard, but it is honestly, I think, the best thing you can do as a doctor and as a person, as a human being. And that's what I hope to leave you with and that you can take from Steve Miller and use in your practice, in your life. So thank you guys for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Maya, thank you so much. I think one of the things that I always feel is so beautiful about Steve was that he gave us all things we can actually do. I think you just gave us that gift today, and I think this whole day is really a pause for us to be able to re-enter, and so thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. I'm going to ask us now to sort of take a breath and actually just be ready to receive these amazing fellowship presentations. So the whole point of the fellowship is really for project support for medical students who are really devoted to enhancing humanism in medicine, in medical education, really from their perspective. And because Steve really changed the way we practice by giving us a humanistic lens that frames all of our patient care, all of our educational encounters, these are the projects we have chosen. And Julie Glickstein said something to me yesterday about her group, but in talking with all of the groups and seeing what they're presenting today, he would have been so proud. And that's probably the best thing that I can say about these. So they're all transformative, either in the way we understand or contribute to patient care. And I really just also want to acknowledge the mentors for these students who are really truly remarkable as well. So we're going to start by just telling you about our awardees, and then we're going to just go right into the presentation. So first, for Sustainable Futures Through Environmental Justice, incorporating a climate health curriculum into the major clinical year and into D&I, is Harrison Fillmore and Hannah Weinstein. Harrison is a fourth-year med student planning to specialize in emergency medicine. He's originally from Columbus, Ohio, graduated from the Ohio State University, I think I said that correctly, in 2018, where he studied Chinese and researched the history of mask wearing in China. He went on to earn a master's in medical anthropology in London and is one of the current Equity and Justice Fellows in Curricular Affairs at VP&S. He likes to read, write, and everything outdoors. Hannah Weinstein is a fourth-year medical student on a research year, originally from Colorado. She completed a BA in biology at Williams College and worked in cancer biology for multiple years before med school. She's published on health center preparedness for climate change and is a former co-leader of the VP&S chapter of Medical Students for Sustainable Future. She's currently a medical fellow at the Global Consortium on Climate and Health Education and is planning a master's in biomedical science. Outside of medicine, she likes to dabble in film, photography, pottery, and bike around the city. And their mentors were Cecilia Sorensen and Dr. Hetty Cunningham. We then have Michelle Batlle and Joshua Dawson. Michelle is a fourth-year medical student passionate about advancing women's health, health equity, and medical education. She graduated from Stanford University in 2013 with a bachelor's in human biology and a master's in education. She taught high school science for 5 years in East Oakland, California, addressing educational barriers and health challenges in primarily Latinx communities. Later, her role as assistant principal deepened her commitment to advocacy and inspired her to pursue a medical career focused on equitable healthcare and patient education. And Michelle is just, her teacher side comes through so beautifully in this presentation, so I'm really excited about that. At VP&S, Michelle is a Brown primary care scholar, a peer tutor, an OB-GYN clerkship mentor, a volunteer at Cosmo, and one of the student-run clinics. She's also co-founded PUSH, which you're going to hear about today. And this amazing Pick Up Sports and Health to promote health literacy in the Washington Heights community is the project they'll be talking about. As a Dominican American, Michelle recognizes the importance of a diverse physician workforce in improving community trust and health outcomes. She's committed to continuing this work in OB-GYN, where she hopes to make a lasting impact on both clinical care and community health. Originally from Federal Way, Washington, Joshua Dawson is a fourth-year med student passionate about promoting health equity. After earning his BS in cellular biology from the University of Washington in 2018, Joshua conducted both basic and clinical diabetes-related research at the NIH as a National Academy Enrichment Program Health Disparities Fellow. To enhance the trainee experience at NIH, he served as a co-chair of the Network of African Americans and co-founded the Trainees Recognizing Excellence and Diversity in Science, that's TREDS, seminar series within NIDDK. At VP&S, he's a Brown Scholars Program participant, a first-generation and low-income partnership participant as well, FLIP. He's the past president of the BALSO, Black and Latino Student Organization, and Amgen, Clinical Investigator Pathway Program Fellow. As a Health Equity and Justice and Dean's Advisory Council rep, he seeks to improve the student experience. In 2022, he co-founded PUSH, that we're talking about today, and he's pursuing a career in anesthesiology, and I'm gonna put a caret on that and say pediatric anesthesiology, I believe, and his mentor is Julie Glickstein. And then finally, we have Paul Lewis, who's a fifth-year med student here at Columbia VP&S, pursuing a dual degree MD-MS. He holds a Bachelor's of Arts from Harvard College, where he concentrated in neurobiology, with a secondary in global health and health policy, where he was involved in numerous community health and education initiatives. He was a recipient of the Finley Fellowship from Harvard to spend a postgraduate year in Japan to learn about end-of-life care. Afterwards, he worked as a TMS therapy clinician at Dignity Brain Health to treat patients with major depressive disorder. At Columbia, he's created numerous education and humanism programming, including Medicine and Research Summer Program, the International Young Researchers Conference, IYRC, Humanism and Anatomy course module, a Japan trip for medical and dental students, and Accomplished, which is the community health worker program he's discussing today. He recently completed a research year as a Dean's Research Fellow and Rubin Scholar, working with Dr. James Noble and Dr. Olajide Williams, his mentors, on the Accomplished Community Health Worker program that you'll hear about today, and he's applying in neurology for residency. I haven't convinced him in pediatric neurology yet, but I'll try. So we're gonna start with Harrison and Hannah, so please come on up.
Hi, everybody. I'm Harry,
And I'm Hannah.
and we're here to talk about our project entitled Sustainable Futures Through Environmental Justice, incorporating a climate health curriculum into MCY, which is Major Clinical Year, and D&I, which is Differentiation and Integration. Those are both part of our curriculum here at VP&S. Before we start, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for being here, and thank you to our mentors, Dr. Hetty Cunningham, Dr. Cecilia Sorensen, for helping us through this project, everyone else who's supported this project, and everyone who's helped make this day happen. So, we'll talk about the project goals that we had for our fellowship. They're listed here, but most of them are actually in service of number 4, which is to prepare VP&S students for leadership within a healthcare landscape shaped by climate change. That's really what's at the heart of climate health and climate justice, and what we want to learn about it, and what we want our fellow future doctors to learn about it. So if you haven't heard about climate health, I'll give you like a brief 30-second crash course right now. So climate health focuses on the interaction between climate change and the health of the environment around us. That includes, weather systems, ecology, animals, plants, air pollution, every single thing, connecting that all with the health and well-being of human beings. So this figure that you might be able to see from the CDC kind of outlines a little bit of that, and there are some more concrete ways that we can think about this, but it really does encompass everything. Some statistics that we can share from the Lancet report on climate health from last year include from the 1990s up until the mid-2010s, there's been a worldwide increase in heat-related mortality by 85%. In addition, as a bunch of pediatricians in the room, I'm sure you guys are all aware of this, but there's been a 32% increased transmission of Zika virus due to climate change and expanding habitats of vectors like mosquitoes. And in addition, the WHO, World Health Organization, projects that there will be in excess of 250,000 deaths worldwide per year after 2030. And that is a very, very, very low estimate because it only includes death from very specific causes like malaria, diarrhea, malnutrition, and heat illness. So we started our project by looking at doing a literature review of all of the things that were coming out about climate health and education in the topic. And we looked at our peer institutions as well to see what they were doing. So in 2022, there were 3,000 peer-reviewed scientific articles on this topic published. In addition, as you can see here, from 2019 to 2023, the percentage of USMD granting medical schools requiring curriculum in the health impacts of climate change has increased from 27 to 65. And so our peer institutions are already doing this, and it's something that we really wanted to help bolster at Columbia. And again, I think that throughout the country, it's definitely been demonstrated again through research and surveys that medical students want to learn about this, and people early on in their medical training definitely feel like they need this as part of their curriculum to be fully prepared. And luckily, so this movement is a lot larger than just us two working with MCY and D&I. Luckily, there was lots of preclinical medical students already trying to integrate the curriculum as well into the preclinical portion. And so we were lucky to have their support and the support from the deans to make this an entirely new curricular theme that goes all the way from the very beginning to the very end of medical school. We also wanted to we think it's very important to connect it to equity and justice, especially because we know, as we can see around the world now, the effects of climate change, including, whether it's heat waves or climate disasters or whatever it is, they affect people who are the most under-resourced, the most vulnerable, the most disadvantaged populations among us first and most severely. And so therefore, any education or interventions around these things have to target them and have to center them. Otherwise, we entirely miss out on helping the people who need it the most.
So to begin the integration of the curricular theme, we formed a working group that meets bi-weekly. It includes 2 second-year medical students, Filippo and Sarah Besh. They are the current leaders of Healthcare Students for a Sustainable Future, which is VP&S's chapter of Medical Students for a Sustainable Future, renamed to be more inclusive of the different healthcare professionals. And then, of course, Dr. Sorensen and Dr. Cunningham. We also compiled the resources that exist out there for forming climate health curricula. This includes climate resources for health education, resources from Harvard and AmeriCare's different journals, including the New England Journal of Medicine and AMC resources. We then look specifically at what the themes and learning objectives should be for Columbia, and we consulted 2 main resources. The Global Consortium on Climate and Health Education has learning objectives that they've proposed for all medical students, and Medical Students for a Sustainable Future also has learning objectives that have been used at different institutions. And we boiled down the themes to these 4 categories. So fundamental concepts, interprofessional collaboration and communication, contribution to illness and disease, and then, of course, application and practice. We then went a step further and designed and kind of synthesized the learning objectives that would fall under each of these themes. And in the right column, you can see we mapped them to where we thought these learning objectives would apply most to the VP&S curriculum. And so just to read one of these examples for 1.2, the goal is that all medical students will be able to identify medical, socioeconomic, and structural factors that make populations more vulnerable to the health impacts of climate change. And you can see in parentheses, we mapped these to Columbia's learning objectives as well as the LCME's learning objectives. For interprofessional collaboration and communication, we came up with 3 learning objectives, and for contribution to illness, we had 1, and then 3 for the final section. And then we went a step further, and we audited the Columbia curriculum, and we identified all the places where climate health education already appears, and then identified, based on the resources we had collected, where we could expand that curriculum and make it more thorough.
So that leads us into phase 2 of this project. where we met with each course director from every MCY clerkship, where we scheduled meetings with the director of every MCY clerkship and the course directors of every course that takes place in the preclinical curriculum. In addition to that, we really value and we really appreciate Columbia's commitment to service learning. We think service learning is a really huge and valuable, amazing part of this curriculum. We think that there's lots of natural overlap between this topic and service learning, and so we reached out to local organizations to see what kind of partnership could exist between us. Here is an example a little bit of what we proposed to be integrated into the MCY curriculum. We focus a lot on MCY and D&I because we want to take these really kind of nebulous topics about, changing climates and climate change and how it impacts the patient in front of you. And so therefore we focus on the diagnosis and treatment of climate-related illnesses. This is one very specifically. You may have seen this chart. This chart is from National Weather Service, the CDC, basically describing to you what actions you should take depending on what level of air pollution is in the, or what level of pollution is in the air. I remember I was on my medicine clerkship actually when we had that day, that really apocalyptic day or week of just orange skies in Manhattan from the forest fires in Canada, and many more people were coming into the hospital there, and I really didn't know what to tell anybody what to do. Was it safe to go out? My mom has very severe asthma. She was wondering, should I be wearing a mask? My brother asked me, should I bike to work? I really had no idea how to answer these questions. So therefore, we kind of came up with some clues, or came up with some cases or applications of this topic baked into the topics that already exist, like COPD exacerbation. So this all kind of like functions on the assumption that knowing the specific risks and mitigation strategies relevant to poor air quality puts us in a better place to diagnose and counsel patients facing elevated risks due to climate change. And so that work is ongoing. As you can see here, these are the meetings that we've had so far with the MCY course directors, and we have more meetings scheduled as our fellowship comes to a close next year. And some things that we have working in the future are an aquifer case and a SIM case. So aquifer is an online platform that we use a lot in primary care to help learn about different patient presentations, especially ones that we might not commonly see in the clinic. And then a simulation-based or simulation case in the emergency medicine clerkship. We really want to highlight We Act. Their full name is We Act for Environmental Justice. We're really hoping, we're in works with them right now, discussing a possible collaboration. If you don't know, so We Act, I put their mission statement up here, but they are an environmental justice organism based in Harlem that focuses on environmental justice, environmental health in northern Manhattan communities specifically. So it was born in 1988 out of a need for this community to stand up for their rights to clean air, clean water, clean places to play and live and breathe and drink and eat and everything like that. And we're hoping that we can develop a service learning clerkship with them, a fellowship potentially for scholarship, for research, for service essentially, and more to come soon on that.
So for phase 3, we're, as mentioned, going to finish our meetings with MCY course directors and then hopefully present a complete D&I elective, as well as finishing what we've been doing with the preclinical phase throughout this whole process. So for the D&I curriculum, within those curricular themes, the focus is on systems and society-wide climate, health, environmental justice, and equity. Some examples of where climate health education can be included are in existing electives like racism and medicine, or the wilderness, disaster, and environmental medicine elective. New places would be in this new climate and health elective, or in new research opportunities for scholarly projects. So we have currently formed a syllabus for this new elective, and our idea currently is to have a 2-week elective using the new format that's available, with the first week focusing on the sustainability and climate resilience of healthcare systems, and the second week focused on advocacy and environmental justice. We also are very interested in making sure this curriculum matches student expectations and understanding how students are perceiving it. So we've developed a survey that will roll out hopefully in December to understand kind of the baseline for Columbia, and then hopefully we'll have some iterations in the coming years to see if this curriculum is making an impact for students. And then in the final phase of our project, we hope to continue to receive feedback from different course directors and the deans, and present the D&I elective. Of course, especially for the D&I elective, we would always love more involvement. So if you have expertise, scholarly projects that students could work on, just interest or time, please get in contact with us. And thank you so much.
We're going to have everyone present, and we'll do questions at the end, just so we make sure everybody gets heard from. And so thank you so much, particularly the LEAC stuff is great. So I'm going to ask for Joshua and Michelle Batlle, I said it wrong before, I'm sorry, to come up and present. He's pulling it up. I think this is how you advance. This is how you advance.
He's going to present for us.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Batlle, and this is my colleague, Joshua Dawson, and we are one of two of many founders of this amazing organization called Pick Up Sports and Health, otherwise known as PUSH. First and foremost, we would like to thank the Steve Miller Fellowship Committee for having us here. It is an absolute honor to share the stage with so many inspiring creators, doctors, humans alike. And so we really appreciate and are honored to be up here talking to you today about an organization that we're very, very passionate about. I also want to thank the rest of the executive board and particularly highlight Coach Dave Crenshaw, who made it in today. Hey, Coach.
And a huge round of applause, too, for Coach Dave.
Coach Dave is a pillar in the Washington Heights and Harlem community. PUSH would not be possible without his guidance, support, and his leadership, and so we're so grateful to have him on our team. And without further ado, I will pass it over to Josh. And this is our new executive board, our M1s and M2s who are coming in and making sure that PUSH stays alive when Josh and I hopefully graduate in May.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. So without further ado, we want to provide a bird's eye view about what PUSH is doing in this short 10-minute presentation. First, I'm going to be 6'2". And then second, I'm going to give an introduction, tell you what we've done, and some of the impact, and Michelle's going to follow up with some of the service learning component. All right, so in these chairs, we're currently located at Columbia University in the orange there in Washington Heights, but Columbia, as we know, serves Washington Heights, Harlem, many boroughs across the city. But the fact that we're located here in the Heights, we predominantly serve a Latinx neighborhood. We predominantly serve Harlem as well, which is a historically black neighborhood. When I arrived at Columbia in 2021, I like to play basketball, so that's why there's a little basketball icon on the right side. I found random local basketball courts with my roommates who are here in the crowd with us, and we would play. Those are actually two of my roommates who are playing currently, and we're still halfway decent. We don't need hip replacements quite yet. But I could still dunk, we could still have a decent jump shot, and the kids, they noticed that. They noticed two things. They noticed we weren't from around here, because they've been playing with each other for years, and they noticed, we're halfway decent at basketball, so they asked us, hey, we haven't noticed you guys, where are you from? And we said, oh, we live right around the way, we just got here. Oh, and we happen to be in medical school. And then their eyes lit up at this idea that, wait, we were both basketball players and pursuing medical education. It was kind of an interesting concept for them in some ways. But then I got into the classroom that fall, and I realized that that same representation that I saw on the basketball court, that wasn't necessarily present in the hospital system. I didn't see that same diversity that was so beautifully seen on the basketball court. And we also know that this isn't necessarily... There we go. This isn't necessarily unique to Columbia. We know that 30% of the US population identifies as Latinx or Black, though 12% of the US population identifies as such. And there's just discrepancies there because we know that if we have greater diversity in the workforce, that could help eliminate or reduce health disparities. Putting these two concepts together, that was kind of the inception of PUSH, Pick Up Sports and Health, where it's this really cool two-pronged model of just what the name says. We do pick up sports, basketball, soccer, jump rope, it doesn't matter, something that gets the kids' heart rates up. And then once they're all tired out, hopefully they're willing to listen to do some health lessons. And the cool thing about PUSH is that it's powered by health profession students who have made a whole slew of lessons from the effects of exercise on heart health, even to, if you look at number 4 there, diabetes. The rates of diabetes in the Heights in Harlem is pretty high, not only in the adults, but also in pediatric populations. We saw this during the pandemic with people being and living more sedentary lives. So what's the easy way to help kids understand this? The relationship between sugary drinks and diabetes. And Coach Kevin, he's an M4, he created this lesson from the ground up, but not without help. There's this really cool model, understanding by design. And given that Michelle was a vice principal for many a year, we didn't just create this and reinvent the wheel, but using these models and adapting it for PUSH, we have clear learning objectives that the health profession volunteers that they teach the students with diction that actually matches school-age children so that it's not just this fancy jargon we're learning in the classroom, but something that the kids might be willing to listen to and take away so that it's not just a one and done. And to provide you kind of a step back about where we began and where we are now, starting as early as summer 2022, Coach Dave will always tell you that we quite literally start on the streets of Washington Heights on 164th and Edgecombe. We didn't have a classroom, but we had people who were willing to show up, people who were willing to listen, and community partners like Coach Dave Trenshaw who took a chance on us. Not only that, but now we're in a PS 128 on a bi-monthly basis with student-powered and led health profession lessons. And not only that, but we're now a student organization. We have T-shirts, but we have sustainability. And these core elements are some of the things that Michelle's going to talk about as to why this program works and why we can hopefully grow and expand.
Given time, we are kind of going to go through these very quickly, but if there's questions at the end about some of the community impact, we'd be happy to talk about those. But you will see that we are present in multiple sites across Harlem and Washington Heights, serving over 200 school-age children. The kids are learning things, which is amazing. That's obviously goal number one. And the kids are being exposed to health careers. They're meeting doctors that look like them or sound like them or speak like their parents. And we're engaging in scholarly work. We've presented PUSH across board in different types of conferences. Happy to talk more about those as well. And as Josh said, PUSH is a sustainable, low-cost, and well-received organization that promotes health literacy and also encourages Washington Heights and Harlem's youth to pursue health careers. So let's take a step back. Josh and I were like, wow, this is great. It works for kids. The kids love it. Coach is excited about it. What's in it for the volunteers? What's in it for these med students, these dental students, these public health students that are giving their time to come out into the community? What are they learning from their service? So what is service learning? So it kind of dates back to like John Dewey days about the idea of learning beyond the classroom. It's taken many forms, but in medical education, we've sort of formalized it as experiential learning that combines community service with also structured and intentional learning and reflection. And it benefits both the participants and the volunteers. It's different than community service in 3 ways. It is a community collaboration. It is not a one-way transaction. It's a bi-directional relationship with the volunteers and the community they serve. So hopefully they're meeting the needs that the community actually wants. It enhances curricula. It is structured within, embedded within the curriculum of a medical education or a dental education or as an elective. And it promotes student reflection, and that is critical. How does this make me a better doctor? How does this make me a better person? How does this make me a more civic-minded individual? Service learning has gotten a lot of attention in the last few decades in the literature, especially as it relates to professionalism and empathy, words that we heard a lot about today from Dr. Meyer and Dr. Schwartz. And the results are overwhelmingly positive. These individuals have perspective, they're civic-minded, they can better understand the resources and the needs that the communities that they serve have, which in turn can then make them better doctors or better caregivers. And not only that, they are better leaders. They have organization skills. They can build an organization from ground up and ensure its sustainability. This is important. As we heard from Dr. Meyer this morning, make the charge. We need more empathy. We need more community-responsive physicians. We need more humanism. Many studies show that this attitude towards serving the historically and intentionally excluded communities, actually that attitude towards serving them declines throughout medical training, from med school into residency, as well as empathy. The good news is educational interventions such as service learning programs, like Dr. Schwartz said, actually make the students pay more attention. And the LCME agrees. There is now a new mandate, element 6.6, that the Faculty of Medical Education needs to support, encourage, and provide ample opportunities for community service and service learning. So over the summer, Josh and I kind of took a step back to formalize this curriculum, so to speak, of PUSH. How is PUSH a service learning model? Using what we've read and learned about from other different service learning programs throughout the literature, and also right here in Columbia, for example, some of the student-run free clinics are some of the best examples of service learning in medical education. We picked 4 domains that we think our volunteers benefit from: community understanding, communication skills, application of knowledge and clinical training, and of course, leadership and teamwork. We laid out what are the elements of PUSH that makes this happen. So we have scholarly work, which gathers attention, of course, for residency programs, and we can better our presentation skills. We have lesson planning and teaching skills. Some of us came in having experience teaching. Others, this is the first time where they're formally teaching individuals. Even just the act of adapting atherosclerosis so that a 7-year-old can understand clogged arteries is huge, right? That's a nuance of the level of understanding of what they're learning in the classroom. And of course, structured reflection around their professional development. So the big question that we asked is, how effectively is PUSH serving as a service learning model? So we sent out a survey internally to our volunteers. If they volunteered at least once, they were able to complete the survey. It was a very simple 13-question survey, 11 questions on the Likert scale that said statements of things that we hoped volunteers were gaining from volunteering with PUSH, and then 2 open-ended questions meant to elicit reflection. 25 volunteers completed the survey. And due to time, I'm only going to highlight a few things that I thought were noteworthy. For the most part, our executive board, all 10 of them, filled out this survey with a little nudge from me. We are obviously the ones that are on the ground weekly, meeting every Tuesday, so this is very important to us. But we also see that there are volunteers that have only volunteered with PUSH once or twice. They're mostly from the med school, even though we do recruit from across the UIMC campus. But what I loved is seeing the diversity of specialties that are volunteering with our community. It is a sports type of volunteering, so no surprise that my ortho bros are out there. But we love to see it, engaging in civic duty. And they kind of go across all 4 years. Some of the statements, overwhelmingly, they all strongly agree. One of the statements that I really liked is that PUSH has helped me explain medical terminology and complex health topics in a way that school-age children can understand. The red is strongly agree, purple is agree, and the blue is neutral. PUSH has allowed me to serve as a role model. PUSH has helped me develop skills in conflict resolution. I am likely to volunteer with PUSH again. My involvement with PUSH has made me feel more connected to the Washington Heights and Harlem community. I'll have Josh highlight in their own words from our volunteers.
Yeah, I think those two questions about the qualitative impacts of push can't go unsaid. For example, students who participate are more confident in their ability to disseminate medical knowledge. They're more empathetic. We've heard that theme many times throughout Steve Miller's presentation today. And again, just being able to share their experiences. It's one thing to be from Federal Way, Washington, all the way on the West Coast, but another to step into a community that you don't know about, but to know that there's still a mutual understanding and that level of humanism that's so critical to medical education. Not just learning about biochemistry, but how do you distill that and distill clogged arteries to a 7-year-old? And some of these quotes, I want Michelle to start on the first one.
So I really love this one. This volunteer talks about how there was a young girl who just loves doing cartwheels, and if you volunteer with Push with us before, you probably know who she is. But Coach Dave let that volunteer know that this student actually has some personal issues that she was dealing with, some hard times that she was going through, and that this was the most engaged and excited that he has seen her. This volunteer also then ran into this little girl out in the neighborhood, and they said hi and smiled at each other. They recognized each other in the community. And this is just to show that they feel like they're important role models to kids.
And one final example is when a young black boy came to one of our volunteers. They'd been showing up to a small group, and regarding one of the health topics, they told the health profession student volunteer, the medical student, I'm going to become a doctor one day. Medical students are busy. They have step 1, step 2, and everything in between, but pun intended, but taking that step to reach out to the kid and say, hey, I look like you, and they having that shared understanding sounds like they can go a long way, not just for the kid, but also in bold there, it also motivates the medical student to continue in their MD degree. And then ever so briefly with the conclusion, PUSH, as we know, in part because of Dr. John Roush and his health profession public health student, we created a survey to evaluate if kids are liking PUSH, if their parents are liking PUSH, and we're seeing a lot of positive impact there. Again, shout out to Dr. Roush, thank you so much. But not just that, but from the service learning component. Medical students are learning something. It's not to be overshadowed that students are becoming more empathetic, more culturally minded, and this greater deepment to community engagement, even if you're an ortho bro.
No hate, love them. I'll need you. Okay. So finally, just next steps, and then I know we have an awesome presentation after us. We want to kind of schedule and support our volunteers more formally. So thinking about scheduling teachings and workshops with adolescent development staff, with faculty, with doctors, to help volunteers learn things, for example, how to resolve conflict amongst 8-year-olds. Skills that nobody's necessarily born with, but can get better at. We also want to formalize and assess the broader VP&S student body on this idea of empathy and attitudes towards serving the under-resourced. And, of course, human capital also needs capital. And we want to think about the sustainability and funding of PUSH so that it stays well beyond our years here.
Awesome.
So I'm just going to end it. Yeah. Here's some adorable photos of us.
And also to our PUSH volunteers, some of it, if you volunteered with PUSH ever, raise your hand and a huge round of applause for them as well.
Okay, you can see that I we want to hear from all of you all the time. Come on up, Paul, we're going to hear your last piece. If you can stay a little longer, please do, and that way we'll be able to do not just questions, but photos as well. Paul.
Thank you so much. What a joy, what a pleasure. Hello, hello. My name is Paul Lewis. I'm excited to talk to you today about Accomplish, a message of love to many people in our community. I will try and navigate this. Let's see. I have my statement of partnership and humility. Perfect, thank you. As well as I have no financial disclosures, but I'm ready anytime. Please, come on. So I want to talk to you about low health literacy. What is health literacy? So health literacy is the ability to obtain, understand, and act on health information. And so when we have people who have low health literacy, they're navigating this blind, shackled, kind of moving along. And we know this disproportionately impacts people of color, minoritized communities, and this leaves them with the inability to get care, to receive care on time, which is crucial, especially in neurology when we think about stroke, and it leaves them vulnerable to misinformation. And we know just this year, published in The Lancet, that neurological disease has climbed to the #1 cause of morbidity worldwide. And the World Health Organization says that 1 in 3 individuals have a neurological disease suffering from morbidity from it. And we know in terms of neurological disease, at the top of that list is stroke, dementia, and migraine, with other things like epilepsy and peripheral neuropathy following right behind it. And so we think about those modifiable risk factors because we know when we look at stroke, 90% of strokes could be prevented. It's a lot of lifestyle habits that many of you are probably like thinking already and making differentials in your head right now, but for time, we think about managing cardiovascular disease and diabetes and hypertension. We think about increasing things like nutrition, physical activity, and sleep. And then we think about reducing things like red meat consumption, smoking, as well as stress in people's lives. But I know this audience who works with a lot of peds, and you're like, hey, this doesn't sound like something just for 50-year-olds. This sounds like a lot of stuff that we see in teenagers and children around us. And that's where these habits start to bud. It's not just starting when someone's 50. They start way earlier. And the data corroborates it. So we see that 7 out of 10 children do not get enough sleep. 1 in 5 have obesity. 3 out of 4 do not get enough exercise. And 1 in 10 teenagers vape. And then the data shows that these same habits that I just talked to you about go from these teenage years all the way up to when someone's 50, leading to higher rates of stroke. And so, in order to combat that, I created Accomplish, Adolescents Caring for Community by promoting literacy on insurance, stroke, health education, emergencies, and dementia, community health worker program. So much easier to say accomplished. And so with this program, we have weekly didactics with students where we teach them health topics. They also receive mentorship paired with 2 graduate students and an undergrad, as well as a fellow high school student. And all our participants in our program take all the information we teach them and take it out into the community. They work with 5 health liaison contacts, teaching everything we teach them. They create health education modules like videos and pamphlets and brochures for their community. And they also create a community health intervention. And so for this past summer, we've had multiple cohorts, but I'll focus on this summer cohort. They do this in 3 phases. Our first phase is the knowledge phase, where they get all this information with the lessons on diabetes and hypertension. Our second phase incorporates more interactive skill-building sessions in which they learn about CPR, and they also get to work with others and work with standardized patients and get to practice interviewing. And our third phase is where they get to interact with the community, doing their community interventions. And so we had students from all across New York City, covering almost every zip code this past summer. And they learned a ton of topics, many of them in the acronym like stroke and dementia, but then there's others like diabetes, hypertension, nutrition that contribute, as well as other things that are relevant to them when they think about acne, as well as things like depression and anxiety that many people face. But then we're also a dual program of health education as well as pipeline program, so we also talk to them about college application process and get them prepared for that. And so we give them validated questionnaires, and this is just a long list of a bunch of them, and they couldn't all fit on one page, but we see improvement across the board with an average of 25% increase from pre-test to post-test, before program to after program, 3 months difference. And it's so inspiring to see students be able to achieve from the data beyond what they were before and understand that information that they didn't know in the beginning. And so with our students, we really have them at the center of all that we do with our mentoring, office hours, and check-ins that we have for them. So as I mentioned with the mentoring, so they get paired with a doctoral student, whether a medical or dental student, a master's student, like public health or nutrition, an undergrad student here at Columbia, as well as one of their peers who participated in the previous cohort. So that's a long pipeline of mentorship that they're able to see that next step, that 5 years from now, and that 10 years from now. Our volunteers also host office hours, these opportunities that they can sit with someone who is in medical school and talk to them about what their dreams are, what their career goals are, as well as work with them on a project in the community. And then we have our wonderful faculty who talk about many different topics for them, kind of exploring and creating that really high bar and excitement for like what a medical career was. So many of them were so enthused seeing neurosurgical procedures, something they won't be doing for many, many years, but if you think about a 15-year-old getting to see a brain open, they're like, whoa, it's so exciting. We also take our students and we don't just teach them in terms of like lectures, but we have them do case-based discussions. And so we'll give them a case as if they have someone who comes up to them and they learn from this experience. And we use the RHYME framework that's used for medical students. So if they want to learn how to record information, what do they see, what are the symptoms? They want to be able to interpret it, what's a differential diagnosis? Manage it, what would you give this person and how would you change in terms of lifestyle to prevent this occurrence, and then educate where they go out and teach their health liaisons. And so it's very exciting with it because we're able to get these students to look at something like a CBC BMP that any of their family members would get or they get when they go to a doctor, and they can recognize within this that, oh, the blood pressure is high, oh, the glucose is high. What could this mean? Or I tell my family member, which is so important because it's information that we see every day and we're so used to, but our community doesn't see it every day, and it might just not know what they are supposed to do with that information. And the students, it's so impressive to see how they go from the pre-test being like, oh, they pee a lot, maybe they just drank a lot of water, to at the end to being able to be like, oh, this is possibly diabetes, or it could be diabetes insipidus, or they think about calcium disorders or things like that. So many differentials that we regularly think of that they're able to put into words. And so they work with health liaisons, so they have 5 people in the community, family, friends, neighbors, people at their church, that they follow up with and teach the content that we teach them. And it puts the student as a teacher, allowing them to really have some agency and learn information, but also feel that self-confidence that they can be a teacher for others. They also do health education projects where they have so much fun with. I'm a little worried about the sound with this, but we'll see what happens. But they get to talk to others about food labels and sharing information about like what you can look out for. They also talk a little bit about diabetes and other things like that, as well as how to compare foods from one thing to another, which is really empowering to be able to see students at such a young age be able to take information, teach their peers, and then get their peers to now look at food labels and understand like, oh, this is what I'm eating and putting in my body, and these are alternatives that I can use. We also invite the students to do a capstone project where they follow a large path of 5 steps. So they start with researching the information, getting that background information behind it. Then they start to design what they want this project to look like in their community. They then plan it out. This is going to happen on what day of the year, and when is it going to happen, who's going to be there. And they implement it and then evaluate it. And then we invite them to the campus to be able to give presentations, which is super exciting to see. I invite you all for our next one. And so it's such an amazing experience how we start with such a small team of individuals and have this ripple effect of our 35 team teaching 200 students per cohort. We've had now 700 students in our program. And those 700 all have their 5 health liaisons, meaning 3,500 people who are impacted. And then they're also doing this community project that has an even greater impact with over 6,797 people already impacted to date from the projects that our students have done. We also love narrative medicine in our program, so what we do is we do a qualitative information of having them reflect and think. This is really just giving them a space to think about what was meaningful for them, what changes do they think about, and we see that there's knowledge changes, being able to recognize things within their family that they're talking about, behavior changes, getting their family members to switch what foods, or personally being like not complaining so much about vegetables from their family. And then there's also self-efficacy, realizing that they can teach, realizing that they're important, that they can do these things that they might not have thought they could in the past. And so it's so encouraging to see. And so I talked about how we're very fun, and once again, I'm going to be a little worried about sound, but let's see if this even works. Oh, maybe this didn't. Ooh. Ooh.
That can dance and clap your hands to it, imitate like you're paralyzed and weak. One arm as you slur every word that you speak. Stand in a line and pretend to be blind. Loss of vision is one of the #1 signs. Walking funny, stagger unsteady. A twisted face will show that you're ready to do that dance that we call a stroke. Ice pick headed, it ain't no joke. Now if he don't sound right, then he's doing a stroke. Sway when he walks, then he's doing a stroke. Slur when he's talk, then he's doing a stroke. Call 911 cause it ain't no joke. Now F is for the face, and A is for the arms, S is for the speech, and T is for the time. Time to do what? Call 911. Time to do what? Call 911. F is for the face, and A is for the arms, S is for the speech, and T is for the time. Time to do what? Call 911. And that's the way that the stroke is done. That can dance and clap your hands to it, imitate like you're paralyzed.
Ideally, this would pause, but let's see. So, with the students on the top right, they were doing rock, paper, scissors, but instead
That can dance and clap your hands to it, imitate.
Instead, we add a little twist to it, and so instead of rock, paper, scissors, they do face, arm, speech, time, kind of getting that repetition in place and doing these games that they're used to. The bottom left image was going to have them seeing a room of 200 students start chanting the songs. It's really empowering and really exciting, so that they can really learn and memorize this information using the tools that Dr. Olajide Williams and Dr. Noble have put together over the past decade. Really, it's empowering to see how much difference they make, which comes to this exciting moment where you feel like the impact that you're having. We have Michelle, who learned from our program, went and had their stroke session, and then she got home one day and found her own mother with her face drooping to one side, and being able to recognize that this is a sign that could be a stroke, and getting her mom to go to a hospital. And it's such an empowering thing to see such a young person be able to have that impact on their family members by recognizing a symptom that they learned within the program. And we have this countless things from sleep apnea across the board of students recognizing things in their family that they're able to get them to go to a doctor for help. And so we had our graduation earlier this month. We had 203 students who were there and presented their projects and everything. We were in an alumni auditorium and filled the room. We had 390 community members present on that day. It was such an exciting, empowering moment, and so we're excited for our next cohort that we're currently in. It's so empowering to see all the work that they've done and all the impact they've had and how they're able to grow from where they were to where they are today. And so with that, I want to thank so many people, for especially this room. Being part of this Steve Miller Fellowship has been such an impactful and motivating experience, and being part of today, getting to see all the work that everyone's done and all the impact in terms of getting our students and communities to really think about what it is like in medicine and thinking about connecting not just the science, but the arts that go into it. And so also a big thank you to Dr. Noble and Dr. Williams for being so motivating, as well as my many people on my team. I couldn't list everyone's pictures here, but everyone who's been a part of this, and thank you so much.
Wow, these have been remarkable presentations and just remarkable work within our community and reaching out to the local community. I'm going to ask everybody to come back up who presented and just see if there are any questions from the audience before we do pictures, et cetera. Anybody have any questions? Dr. Willard.
Yeah, so one of the parts of Accomplish, at least that we do for long-term outcomes, is inviting students back for our participant advisory board. So we have high school students still on our team regularly following up. We also encourage them to keep in touch with our team. But then we also, with our program, we sometimes, because we have so many medical students, kind of talk a lot about medicine, but we're also very open to health careers and thinking about not just your career in health, but your family, your community, thinking about that and how, regardless of what field you go into, could this be something applicable to your life? And I think that's been one of the directions that we've gone with that.
Yeah, and in one qualitative way, I don't know about the quantitative answer quite yet, but Coach Dave, we'd only be here because of him, and he has such a great track record, not just with the kids, but with their parents 10, 20, 30 years later. So I would imagine doing something similar, as like Paul had mentioned, and just bringing the kids back 10, 20 years later. Did this actually make an impact to what you're doing today?
I think my ideal, or like in the ideal world, my answer is that in 20, 30 years, you can look across the country and see healthcare providers, residents, attendings who have gone on to make sure that each of their healthcare systems is prepared for climate change and that all of their patients are receiving appropriate care. But it might take a while.